Good day, I'm Junior Researcher Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Fey Spheres, Redcaps. I'd appreciate that all hunters please subscribe as to not miss any future lectures, and also if you enjoyed the lecture and find it informative, please like the video and click the bell to ensure you do not miss any future announcements. I would also be very happy to hear your thoughts, views and stories of your own interactions with the monsters of the spheres in the comment area of this video. Also, I'm always ready to answer any questions you may have, and please share these lectures with any hunters you feel would benefit from them. So, to begin, as always, we'll start with our general announcements. Firstly, as of now, we are still attempting to gain a full grasp of the events that transpired with the specialty contract. As such, next week's video will be the breakdown of the entire event. Secondly, a ghostly apparition of a car and driver has been seen moving across Pendine Sands. The location, known for its many land speed record attempts, has seen rather a few unfortunate deaths by drivers during their runs. This leaves us with rather a long list of possible candidates that the ghost could be mimicking. The apparition itself appears upon the beach at 2:57 AM every Thursday and proceeds to race across the sands at high speeds. The level of the tides appear to offer no barrier to the entity, with it moving at the same consistent speed of 389 miles per hour. This, coupled with the helmet worn by the driver, makes a positive identification somewhat troublesome. Another issue with the identification is that it may not be mimicking a driver at all. There is a chance that the ghost has based its form upon a fan of land speed record attempts. This can happen in rare cases when an individual has such a strong want to be something that after their death and the spirits mimicking into a ghost, the wanted self-image also transitions over, being made manifest by the ghost. We do have a rough time frame of when the ghost is from based upon the design of the car, but also the fact that it seems to be trying to break the 400 mile per hour speed barrier. The particular record was set in 1964, meaning that the ghost must be mimicking an individual from before that point. As with many entropic entities, the hunters will need to establish the identity for the ghostly apparition and then perform the appropriate burial rite. Due to the ghost sharing the beliefs of the person they're mimicking, this will make them believe that they should pass on, which will make the ghost revert back into a benign spirit. If you are interested in this contract, please contact your local order office. Finally, we have received an update on the North Wales Redcap situation. While the investigation at the English-Scottish border is still ongoing, we have been contacted by a group calling themselves the FIF, or the Fey Integration Fund, that have taken responsibility for the actions. This group has threatened violence against us if we continue to both disrupt their activities, but also if we continue to harm Fey creatures. The group appears to be an extremist Fey advocacy group hell-bent on the normalization and preservation of Fey beings within our world. They argue that the Fey's propensity for violence and sadism is a reaction to our own actions against the Fey, so the idea that if we were to stop, they would become more peaceful. This is abnormal, as even other Fey-aligned groups do not make this claim, either arguing that we should accept the Fey nature or that the Fey's mindset is one that would be beneficial to man. Currently, we are proceeding under the assumption that the FIF are under the control of a powerful Fey that is using them for its own ends. However, this may not actually be the case. Either way, the group is a threat to the safety of the general population, as displayed by the Redcap incident. They argue that they were transporting the Redcaps from the English-Scottish border, where they are hunted, to North Wales, where they could thrive. The fact that these creatures are extremely dangerous and cause the deaths of rather a few within North Wales before being hunted down does not appear to factor into their mission. An issue that has confounded researchers of the spheres since such work began is the problem of nation-specific entities breaching from the same sphere. Using today's subject as an example, the Redcap is a Fey entity that breaches within Scotland, but not within Wales, despite the fact that the Fey sphere breaches in both locations. So the question becomes, how is a seemingly random process, the breaching of entities from the spheres, so discerning as to have location-specific entities from the same sphere? There are currently two schools of thought on this subject. The first is the Terentian theory, named for Dr. Terence Daniels. The theory posits that the breaches are not truly random. We know that belief plays a large part in which spheres breach where, so with the Terentian model, the idea is expanded to the point where specific entities will breach based on the belief of the local population. The second is the Zhang theory created by Professor Zhang. This theory posits that there are many more than one of each sphere, and in fact we are in contact with a great many nearly identical spheres. So, Wales, Scotland, Ireland and Cornwall all have their own unique phase spheres that breach into them. Following this theory, this would also hold true for all the other spheres as well, meaning that the scale of the problem we face is far larger. If we were to somehow close the phase sphere within Wales, it would mean that the other locations that are breached by a phase sphere would be unaffected. Whichever theory you subscribe to, and I would be interested to know which one, the main point is that there are entities that we do not need to deal with despite the fact that we are breached by the sphere they are associated with. Before we start proper, I'd like to thank Freelance Hunter at the Slumbering Sanctuary for researching and providing much of the information we are about to discuss. So, we'll begin today with an example. Within the town of Dumfries, Scotland, in the year 1964, a series of grotesque murders left the mundane investigators stumped. 11 individuals had been found staked upside down to walls with large wooden nails forced through their wrists and ankles. Their throats had been cut in a similar manner to how one would go about draining an animal after slaughter. Beneath them was always a receptacle for catching the blood, though the individual items were not specific, from metal bins to a series of glass bottles with the tops smashed off. The victims were always found in locations where they had no reason to be, such as behind shops or in blind alleyways. Each of the victims suffered a blunt force trauma to the back of their head before being staked to the wall, and each were alive during this process. The collected blood always possessed small fibers of a wool-like substance within it, and these same fibers could often be found around the victims' neck wounds. Being before DNA analysis, the first thought to come to mind was a serial killer that the press named the Dumfries Dracula. However, the Tam Lin's Rangers, one of the many smaller anti-incursion teams of Scotland, were the first to suspect the truth. A single redcap had escaped the border net and made its way to Dumfries. The problem, however, when identifying if a redcap is present is that no two redcaps have an identical MO. While all drain their victims of blood for reasons that we will discuss shortly, the way in which they do this and what they do to their victims beforehand varies greatly. Like many of the phase sphere, the redcaps possess these same sadistic tendencies. However, in their case, theirs seems to be dialed up, which may be a reaction to how they must function in order to live. After birth or spawning, we are not sure to which, young redcaps are without their titular caps. Instead, they possess a thin, straggly, and sparsely placed head of hair, which is snow white in colour. Within their first year of life, this hair will begin to curl and knot together, conforming closely to the shape of their skull. After their first year has passed, this hair will have knotted so tightly as to create an almost hat-like structure upon their heads, though at this point it is still attached to their hair follicles. Once the redcaps reach full maturity, their hat-like structures will detach from their heads, becoming true caps, which they will guard with their lives, as their very lives literally are bound to it. Along with this detachment, they will also begin suffering an all-consuming hunger, though not from their actual stomachs, which they do possess, but instead from the caps themselves. This instinct is what pushes them to soak their caps within blood, and after doing so, their hunger is sated. In this early stage, the redcaps will go after small animal life to satisfy their hunger, which will also give them time to hone both their hunting methods, but also their illusory skills. Redcaps, like many Fey entities, naturally have an aptitude for magic, however theirs is somewhat limited when compared to beings like the male nymph. While some Fey entities can create entire pocket realities or warp our reality around themselves, Redcaps are only capable of creating massless objects that look real but can be walked straight through. Due to this limitation, Redcaps develop a far more inventive mind, finding ways to not only overcome this issue, but to master their ability. They have been seen creating false sounds, buildings, moving vehicles, and even people. By the time they reach their true adulthood, they are more than capable of creating a scenario that will lead an unfortunate person to a place where they cannot be seen. Sadly, for any caught up in a Redcap's trap, they exhibit 4 times the strength of a human male at the height of their physical strength. Along with this, as beings they are incredibly crafty, being able to create tools for any problem that they need to overcome. For weapons, the Redcaps appear to prefer blades above all else, with each carrying a single-bladed weapon that they will create and hone over years. These blades, though looking rather rough by our standards, are incredibly strong and seem to be able to hold their edge no matter what they are put through. This is most likely due to a lesser form of their magic, allowing them to imbue concepts into the things they create, such as sharp. This then becomes an intrinsic part of the blade, that by its very nature it is sharp. Even with these advantages, Redcaps will rarely engage in what we would call a fair fight. As with our example, the individual, after leading its victim into position, clubbed them into unconsciousness and secured them in place before draining them of their blood. This more cautious behavior may be a holdover from their own sphere. As adults, Redcaps never get larger than a 10-year-old human, and within their sphere they are relatively low on the food chain. If given enough time within our sphere, we may see instances of more openly aggressive Redcaps as they realize that we are, typically, of little threat to them. The soaking of their caps within fresh blood, as stated, appears to sustain them. This implies a link between both the entity and the self-grown item of clothing that is not immediately apparent from our perspective of how things work. The problem when looking at entities from other spheres is that they continue to exist with their own sphere's laws while within ours. So what looks to us like 2 separate things, in this case the Redcap and their hat, is in actuality one thing, no matter how disconnected the two appear to us to be. It has been tested that the Redcaps and their hats can be on opposite sides of the Earth, but as long as the hat is kept moist with fresh blood, the Redcap will continue to persist. On a similar note, objects created by the Redcaps will continue to keep their anomalous properties even after the death of their creators. This has led to, especially in the case of their knives, them being widely sought after, as, despite their crude design, they are light, extremely durable, and always sharp. So, how does one effectively hunt a Redcap? Well, the first and most important rule is to never hunt a Redcap alone. As they are ambush predators, a solo hunter will be incapacitated long before they ever even see the entity. This method of theirs, however, can somewhat be turned to our advantage. A Redcap will never immediately kill their prey, instead delighting in the suffering they cause. So, if one hunter were to deliberately walk into their trap while other hunters lay in wait, the tables can be turned. The issue is needing to draw the Redcaps out of hiding, which is something that only happens when prey is available. The Redcap's trap must be sprung before they can be engaged, so someone needs to act as bait. This unfortunate hunter will suffer one of a number of injuries during this duty, from head trauma to cut tendons, but all will be non-fatal. Once the trap is sprung, the other hunters can then rush in to confront the Redcap. As a Fey being, they are thankfully susceptible to cold iron. However, even then, caution is advised. Melee should never be undertaken, as due to their inherent strength, it is a losing battle. Instead, cold iron range weaponry is preferred, but even then, it is a risk as the hunter who was acting as bait will be present, and the Redcaps have shown that they can use this person as a hostage. What needs to happen is that the Redcap must believe that it can run away. Once it sees its opening, it will attempt to leap from the scene. This is when you must fire upon it while it is in the open air. This will heavily wound the creature, but not outright kill it. To do that, you must destroy the hat, which can be achieved with the use of fire. The fact of the matter is that none of this is easy. The Redcaps are creatures that specialize in conflict avoidance. As such, they are nightmares to nail down, even for experienced hunters who deal with them rather regularly. The Redcaps are an odd example of a developing problem for all of us in the anti-incursion field. While the Redcaps were spread deliberately, there are far more cases of entities spreading naturally within our world. Because breaches appear demographic specific, we've ended up in a position where hunters in one country are completely unable to deal with the entities of breach in a neighbouring country. Unfortunately, just as with mundane animals, entities do not care about borders, leading to situations where these creatures naturally migrate as they spread out and look for territory. So the question then becomes, do we get our hunters to learn how to hunt these creatures before or after they migrate? But that will be all for today, with Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom. Thank you.